Emily had always felt the weight of the world pressing down on her, a quiet pressure that seemed to follow her everywhere, from the narrow streets of her small hometown to the wide open fields where she ran every morning just to feel free. She was the kind of girl who often went unnoticed, blending into the background while others laughed and shouted with confidence she didn't yet feel she deserved. From childhood, people told her she was too small, too fragile, or too timid to ever accomplish anything significant, and though she tried to ignore it, the words burrowed deep into her mind, creating a quiet storm of doubt that never fully disappeared. Now, standing in the open expanse of the military training camp, surrounded by towering buildings, harsh winds, and the constant echo of orders, she could feel that old storm stirring again. The sun was high and unforgiving, beating down on the backs of the recruits as they marched in perfect lines, their boots striking the ground in synchronized rhythm, creating a pounding sound that seemed to make Emily's heart race faster with every step. Sergeant Williams, the commanding figure who seemed to command attention effortlessly, moved along the line with a stern expression, his eyes sharp and unyielding, scrutinizing every recruit as if he could see their very thoughts. Emily could feel his gaze on her, assessing, judging, weighing her abilities against an invisible standard she didn't know she could meet. The drills were grueling, demanding precision, speed, and endurance, and with each exercise, her muscles ached more than she expected. She stumbled once during a running drill, and in that instant, she felt the familiar sting of embarrassment and doubt crawling over her like a shadow she couldn't shake. Sergeant Williams stepped forward immediately, placing a firm hand on her shoulder to correct her stance, and Emily felt a surge of panic. She knew that if she faltered again, the whispers and snickers from some of the other recruits would grow louder, their judgment heavier. But instead of shrinking under the weight of their eyes, she drew a deep breath, feeling her chest rise and fall with deliberate calmness, as if anchoring herself in the belief that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. She straightened her back, tightened her grip on the training equipment, and forced her legs to move in rhythm with the rest of the group, focusing on each step, each motion, as though the world around her had narrowed to just this one point of control. The hours stretched on, each one a test of not only physical endurance but also mental resilience. The sun sank low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dirt and grass, and yet there was no rest, no pause, only the relentless march of exercises and commands. Emily felt exhaustion gnawing at her body, a fatigue so deep that every movement felt heavier than the last, but somewhere inside her, a small flame of determination refused to die out. She remembered the nights as a child when she would dream of being stronger, of being capable, of proving to herself that the voice of doubt was wrong. Those dreams had carried her through long runs before sunrise, early mornings when the cold air stung her face, and countless moments when she felt like giving up. And now, in this place that seemed designed to break anyone who wasn't prepared, she realized that those dreams were no longer distant fantasies, they were her lifeline, a reminder that she had the power to overcome even the most daunting challenges. When the recruits were ordered into a grueling obstacle course that included crawling through mud, climbing ropes, and balancing on narrow beams, Emily's body protested with every movement, her arms burning, her legs trembling, her hands slick with sweat and dirt. At one point, she slipped on the muddy ground and fell, the sting of embarrassment sharper than any physical discomfort. A few recruits laughed quietly, not maliciously, but with the careless thoughtlessness of those who had not yet faced real struggle. Emily felt a rush of self-consciousness, a whisper in her mind telling her she wasn't good enough, wasn't fast enough, wasn't strong enough. But then, beneath that whisper, there was another voice, quieter but more powerful, a voice that had been with her all her life, urging her to stand up, to keep going, to believe in herself even when no one else seemed to. She pressed her palms into the mud, felt the cold and wet cling to her skin, and slowly pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the laughter, ignoring the stares, focusing only on the rhythm of her breathing, the beat of her heart, and the certainty that she could do this. As she continued through the course, Emily noticed small details she hadn't before: the way the rope swayed under her weight, the exact angle of the beams that would keep her balance, the timing of her steps to conserve energy without losing speed. Each success, no matter how small, gave her a surge of confidence, and she felt the storm of doubt that had plagued her for so long begin to lose some of its intensity. She was not invincible, not yet, but she was learning the power of perseverance, the strength that came from refusing to give in, and the clarity that came from focusing on what she could control rather than the opinions of others. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Emily was drenched in sweat and caked in mud, but she was still moving, still standing, still proving if only to herself that she belonged. Sergeant Williams walked by one last time, his gaze lingering on her longer than before, and for the first time, Emily felt a flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes. It wasn't praise, not yet, but it was recognition, a quiet nod to the fact that she had endured, that she had not let herself be broken by exhaustion or doubt. That night, as Emily lay on the simple cot in her bunk, her body aching and her mind still buzzing with the day's challenges, she realized something profound: the world might continue to test her, might continue to throw obstacles and doubts in her path, but she had discovered a resilience within herself that was stronger than she had ever imagined. She had learned that being underestimated was not a weakness, it was a chance to surprise everyone, especially herself. And as the stars appeared outside the small window of the barracks, Emily closed her eyes with a sense of quiet determination, ready to face whatever the next day would bring, knowing that she was no longer the girl who shrank under scrutiny. She was someone who could endure, someone who could rise from the dirt, someone who could face challenges not with fear but with courage, patience, and a growing sense of confidence that nothing could take away. The long day had been exhausting, humbling, and at times humiliating, but it had also been transformative. Emily had survived her first real test in the training camp, and more importantly, she had discovered a spark inside her that could not be extinguished, a quiet strength that promised she was capable of far more than anyone, including herself, had ever believed. And with that thought, she drifted into a deep sleep, ready to face the next trial with renewed determination and the knowledge that she had already begun to change from the girl who had once been overlooked to the young woman who was learning how to stand tall in the face of any challenge. The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of boots marching across the compound, the crisp rhythm of commands echoing against the walls of the barracks and pulling her immediately into alertness. She stretched carefully, feeling the soreness in her muscles from the previous day, but there was a strange pride beneath the fatigue, a recognition that her body, though tired, had endured more than she had ever imagined. The morning air was chilly, carrying with it a sense of purpose and expectation as recruits began assembling for the day's exercises. Emily moved with a deliberate calm, each step measured, each motion controlled, determined not to let exhaustion or nerves dictate her actions. The drills began almost immediately, starting with rigorous running circuits that tested speed, endurance, and concentration all at once. Emily's legs burned with every stride, her lungs gasping for air, but she refused to let herself fall behind. Around her, other recruits were pushing themselves too, some struggling visibly, some appearing almost effortless in their movements, and for a moment, she felt the familiar pang of doubt, that whisper that tried to convince her she wasn't enough. But then she remembered yesterday, the feeling of rising after a fall, the small victories that had reminded her of her own strength, and she pushed that doubt away like a cloud she could see and ignore. After running, the recruits were directed to a new challenge, a complicated obstacle course designed to test coordination, balance, and focus under pressure. Emily approached it with careful attention, her eyes scanning the sequence of hurdles, ropes, and narrow beams, mentally calculating each step before attempting it. Her hands were raw from gripping ropes the previous day, and her feet ached from long hours of marching and running, but she forced herself to focus on precision rather than speed, knowing that control often mattered more than brute force. As she climbed the first rope, she felt a surge of determination, a sense that each pull upward was a small triumph over the doubts that had followed her for so long. A few recruits laughed quietly when she paused to catch her breath, thinking she might falter, but Emily simply tightened her grip, lifted herself higher, and moved with a steady rhythm that reflected her growing confidence. The mud pit came next, and she took a deep breath, knowing it would be uncomfortable, messy, and exhausting. She plunged into it without hesitation, feeling the cold, thick mud cling to her body, but she focused on the goal rather than the discomfort. Each step through the muck was slow but deliberate, and with each passing moment, she realized that the challenges themselves had lost some of their power to intimidate her. By the time she emerged, covered in mud and panting heavily, Emily's focus had sharpened, and she felt a strange exhilaration in overcoming obstacles that seemed insurmountable to some. Sergeant Williams was watching from a distance, his eyes scanning every recruit, lingering on Emily just a fraction longer than on the others, though he did not speak. That tiny acknowledgement, subtle as it was, gave her a quiet sense of reassurance that she was making progress, even if the approval was unspoken. The day moved on in a blur of exercises, stretching from running to climbing, from balancing tasks to endurance drills, each designed to challenge not only physical strength but mental resilience as well. Emily noticed the other recruits starting to respect her efforts, offering quiet nods or words of encouragement when she completed particularly difficult parts of the course. It was a small thing, but it mattered immensely, proving that her determination was not only visible to herself but to those around her. By midday, the sun was high and harsh, beating down on the compound, but Emily refused to let fatigue or discomfort slow her down. She pushed herself to maintain pace, feeling the sweat on her skin and the burn in her muscles as evidence of her commitment. During a particularly demanding rope climb, she felt her arms tremble and her grip slip slightly, and for a moment, a familiar fear rose within her, the fear of failing, of disappointing herself and everyone around her. But she remembered the lesson of yesterday: falling was not failing, giving up was. She steadied her breathing, focused her mind, and in a single, deliberate motion, completed the climb with precision and control, landing firmly on the platform above with a quiet satisfaction that washed away any lingering doubt. After the obstacle course, the recruits were instructed to practice team exercises that required cooperation, communication, and trust. Emily paired with a recruit named Noah, a quiet and observant boy who had struggled with the physical exercises but showed remarkable patience and thoughtfulness in planning and strategy. Together, they navigated balance beams and carrying drills, learning to anticipate each other's movements and communicate clearly under pressure. Emily discovered that teamwork brought a new type of challenge, one that required not just personal strength but the ability to understand and support another person's actions and reactions. As the afternoon wore on, she felt her energy waning, her muscles screaming for relief, but she also felt a profound sense of purpose growing within her. Each small victory, each completed obstacle, each successful team maneuver reinforced the idea that persistence and focus could overcome almost any difficulty. When the final drill of the day arrived, a demanding endurance challenge involving timed runs, precision tasks, and coordination under exhaustion, Emily felt the familiar pang of fear, but it was tempered by determination. She refused to let herself be pushed down, refused to let doubt rule her actions, and she faced the challenge head-on. Step by step, motion by motion, she completed the course, sometimes slower than others but with complete control, her mind focused on precision and persistence rather than the opinions of others. As she crossed the final line, her body trembling with exertion, she felt a wave of quiet triumph wash over her. For the first time, she realized that strength was not only measured in speed or power but in persistence, focus, and the ability to rise above doubt and fear. Sergeant Williams approached her afterward, his stern face softened slightly as he nodded once, a subtle but meaningful gesture of acknowledgement. Emily met his gaze and felt an unusual warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and the growing certainty that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. That evening, as she returned to the barracks, mud-stained and exhausted, she noticed the subtle shift in the camp. Recruits who had whispered doubts now offered nods or quiet smiles, and even the more confident ones seemed to regard her with a hint of respect. Emily felt a small, glowing sense of accomplishment, knowing that her perseverance and determination had begun to inspire those around her. Sitting on her cot later, stretching her tired muscles, she reflected on the day and the lessons it had taught her. She realized that fear and doubt could never truly control her unless she allowed them to, and that small, consistent efforts, focused determination, and self-belief could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. She thought of her family back home, of the small girl who had once been told she was not strong enough, not capable enough, not worthy of attention, and she smiled quietly to herself. That girl still existed somewhere inside her, but she had grown, strengthened by every challenge, every fall, every moment of doubt that she had refused to surrender to. Emily understood now that her journey was far from over, that each day would bring new trials, new lessons, and new opportunities to prove her strength not to others, but to herself. And as the night settled over the camp, the quiet hum of distant activity and the soft rustling of the barracks settling into sleep, Emily closed her eyes with a deep sense of resolve. She had faced fear, exhaustion, and doubt, and she had emerged stronger, more focused, and more confident. She knew the days ahead would not be easy, that new obstacles awaited, but for the first time, she felt ready not just to endure, but to thrive, to grow, and to prove to herself that she could rise above any challenge with patience, courage, and unshakable determination. And with that thought, she drifted into sleep, dreaming not of failure, but of the endless possibilities that lay ahead, each challenge a stepping stone toward the person she was becoming, the person she was determined to be, and the girl who would never again let anyone, or anything, throw her down without rising stronger than before. The morning of the third day arrived with a crisp chill that bit at Emily's skin as she stepped out of the barracks, but instead of deterring her, it seemed to sharpen her senses and awaken a focus she had not felt before. She could feel her muscles still sore from the previous 2 days of relentless training, but the soreness now felt like proof of progress rather than a burden, a reminder that each ache and twinge represented growth, effort, and determination. As the recruits gathered in formation, Sergeant Williams began today's exercises with a stern lecture, reminding them that endurance, mental toughness, and quick thinking were just as important as physical strength. Emily listened carefully, her mind fully engaged, absorbing every word, analyzing every instruction, and quietly planning how she would tackle the day's challenges. The first drill involved a combination of agility and precision, requiring recruits to move through a complex series of obstacles while maintaining perfect form and balance. Emily approached it methodically, taking in the height of each rope, the spacing of the beams, and the angles of each hurdle. She noticed the hesitation in some recruits as they calculated their movements, the fear in others as they doubted their ability to complete the tasks, and she silently reminded herself not to follow their uncertainty. Step by step, she moved with controlled speed, her focus entirely on each motion, each grip, each careful placement of her feet, refusing to allow fatigue or pressure to cloud her judgment. The sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the field, yet Emily felt almost weightless in her concentration, her mind narrowing to a state where nothing existed beyond the next movement, the next challenge, and the certainty that she could overcome it. By the time she reached the mud pit, her body was trembling slightly from exhaustion, but her resolve was unwavering. She plunged into the cold, thick mud with the same calm determination she had shown on the previous day, refusing to be slowed or intimidated by discomfort. The mud clung to her, weighing her down, yet she pushed through, step by step, finding her balance and rhythm, and emerging with a quiet sense of triumph. Other recruits watched her progress, some whispering quietly to one another, their surprise barely contained at the steadiness and resilience she displayed. Sergeant Williams observed from a distance, his sharp eyes following her movements, and for the first time, Emily felt the weight of scrutiny without it making her falter. She had learned to focus inward, to rely on her own skills and determination rather than fear of judgment, and it gave her an unexpected strength that radiated through every motion she made. The day's exercises grew increasingly difficult, combining endurance, teamwork, and mental agility. Emily was paired with a recruit named Lucas, a boy known for his clever thinking and calm demeanor under pressure. Together, they navigated complex balance tasks and weight-bearing challenges, communicating with clear, concise instructions and anticipating each other's movements. Emily realized that the ability to trust another person, to synchronize her efforts with someone else, was as challenging as any physical obstacle. Yet she also discovered the satisfaction of shared effort, the joy of knowing that her actions could support and uplift another, and that together they could accomplish tasks that might have seemed impossible alone. During a timed climbing exercise, Emily felt a surge of fear rise within her, a deep, instinctive fear of failure, of slipping, of letting herself or her partner down. But she remembered the lessons of the past days, the triumph over doubt, the quiet strength she had nurtured, and she pushed through the fear. With precise, deliberate movements, she climbed, gripping tightly, placing her feet carefully, breathing steadily, until she reached the top with Lucas close behind. The exhilaration was not just in completing the climb, but in realizing that she had confronted fear and uncertainty directly, and had emerged stronger for it. After a brief rest, Sergeant Williams called the recruits to the final exercise of the day, a test of both physical strength and mental strategy that required improvisation and quick thinking under pressure. Emily's heart raced as she approached the challenge, knowing that this was an opportunity to prove not only her endurance but also her ability to adapt and remain calm when situations became unpredictable. The exercise involved navigating a series of obstacles while balancing weighted objects, making split-second decisions about how to move efficiently and safely. Emily noticed other recruits struggling, some becoming flustered and hesitant, and she reminded herself to remain composed, to trust in the skills she had honed over the past days, and to focus on what she could control rather than the chaos around her. Step by step, she moved with remarkable precision, her mind calculating the best path, her body responding instinctively, and her confidence growing with each successful maneuver. When Sergeant Williams added a surprise twist and additional weight to carry across an unstable platform, Emily felt the instinct to panic, but she drew in a deep breath and reminded herself of the strength she had cultivated. With controlled movements, she adjusted her stance, shifted her weight strategically, and carried the load across the platform without faltering. The camp went silent for a moment as her success became clear to everyone, and even Sergeant Williams' usually stern expression softened as he studied her carefully. Emily felt a surge of pride, not in arrogance, but in the quiet realization that she had proven something to herself that no one else could take away, that she was capable, strong, and unshakable when she trusted her own abilities. By the time the exercise concluded, Emily's body was trembling with exhaustion, yet her spirit felt invigorated, her mind alive with the clarity that came from conquering fear and doubt. Recruits gathered for the final debrief, and she noticed the subtle change in how they regarded her, some with respect, some with curiosity, and some with a quiet acknowledgement that she was no ordinary recruit. She realized that her resilience had become visible, not through loud displays of strength or aggression, but through consistent focus, calm determination, and unwavering perseverance. Later, as Emily returned to the barracks, she reflected on the events of the day, her mind replaying every challenge she had faced and every small victory she had achieved. She thought about the way fear had attempted to take hold, and how she had faced it directly, step by step, refusing to let it control her actions. She considered the teamwork exercises, and how working with Lucas had shown her the importance of trust, communication, and mutual support, lessons that extended beyond physical challenges into the way she approached life itself. Sitting on her cot, Emily stretched her sore muscles and felt a deep sense of satisfaction that went beyond accomplishment. It was the knowledge that she was growing, changing, and evolving with every challenge she encountered. The thought of the future, which had once seemed overwhelming and intimidating, now carried a sense of possibility and excitement. She realized that her journey was not only about surviving the camp, but about discovering who she truly was and what she was capable of achieving when she refused to give in to doubt, fear, or exhaustion. As night fell over the camp, and the sounds of quiet conversations and distant footsteps filled the barracks, Emily closed her eyes with a calm determination, understanding that every moment of struggle had been an opportunity to grow stronger, smarter, and more resilient. She had faced uncertainty, fatigue, and fear, and had emerged not only intact but transformed, with a quiet confidence that radiated from her even in the dark. And as she drifted into sleep, she held on to the knowledge that the next day, and every day after that, would bring new challenges, but she was ready to face them with courage, focus, and the growing certainty that nothing could hold her back as long as she trusted herself, her skills, and the quiet strength that had been building within her all along. The fourth day of training arrived with a quiet intensity that seemed to hang over the entire camp, as if the air itself was charged with anticipation and unspoken challenges, and Emily felt a mixture of nervousness and determination settle deep within her chest. She rose early, before the sun had fully risen, the first light casting pale gold across the barracks and igniting the morning dew that clung to the grass. Her muscles were sore from the past 3 days, and her body carried the memory of exhaustion and strain, but her spirit felt sharper than ever, focused on the knowledge that today would be unlike the previous days. Sergeant Williams had promised a more advanced set of exercises, ones that would test not only endurance and strength but precision, strategy, and mental toughness under unexpected pressure, and Emily could sense that this was the moment when her training would truly be tested. As the recruits lined up, she noticed the tension in the group, the whispered comments, the subtle looks of determination, and the occasional flicker of worry in their eyes, yet she felt a calm focus settle over her. She had learned that fear was only as powerful as the attention it received, and she refused to allow it to distract her. The morning drills began with a complex obstacle sequence, designed to challenge coordination, timing, and adaptability simultaneously. Emily approached each task with the quiet confidence that had been building over the past days, analyzing every angle, predicting every shift in balance, and adjusting her movements with precision. When she reached the mud crawl, a stretch of cold, thick mud that tested stamina and perseverance, she remembered the first day she had faced a similar challenge and how far she had come since then. She pushed forward with steady determination, refusing to let the weight of exhaustion slow her down, and emerged from the mud with a sense of triumph that fueled her energy for the exercises ahead. Soon, Sergeant Williams introduced a new drill that required one-on-one physical coordination and skill, a test that involved both strength and technique. Emily was paired with a more experienced recruit, a boy named Daniel, known for his speed and agility. The task was to maneuver in a controlled way while maintaining balance and using leverage effectively to complete the exercise successfully. Emily felt a brief flash of anxiety. Daniel was strong, fast, and confident, but she quickly reminded herself that physical strength alone did not determine success. She had developed focus, precision, and timing over the past days, and she trusted in her own abilities. When the exercise began, Daniel moved quickly, expecting Emily to falter under his pressure, but she remained calm, adjusting her stance, anticipating his movements, and responding with skill rather than force. The other recruits watched closely, some whispering doubts about whether she could hold her own, but Emily's attention remained entirely on the task, on the rhythm of movement, and on the quiet knowledge that she had prepared for this moment more than anyone else could see. Midway through the drill, Sergeant Williams unexpectedly stepped in to demonstrate a new technique, taking Emily by surprise. He applied a firm hold to guide her through the exercise, a standard part of instruction, but Emily felt a surge of instinctive awareness and focus. This was the moment she had been building toward, not with aggression, but with control, skill, and the quiet confidence that she could respond effectively to a challenge. With a measured movement she had practiced in secret during her downtime, Emily shifted her weight, adjusted her grip, and released herself from the hold with precise timing. The movement was smooth, controlled, and surprisingly effortless, yet it carried a weight that could not be ignored. Sergeant Williams froze for a fraction of a second, his usual composure giving way to visible surprise, and the entire group went silent as the impossible had been achieved before their eyes. Emily stood tall, mud-stained, and breathless but fully composed, her heart racing not from fear, but from the exhilaration of accomplishing something she had once thought beyond her reach. The other recruits stared in disbelief, some wide-eyed, some whispering quietly to one another, and even Daniel looked at her with a newfound respect that had not been there before. In that single moment, Emily realized the power of preparation, focus, and trust in her own abilities, and she felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not in proving others wrong, but in knowing that she had proven to herself what she was truly capable of. Sergeant Williams approached afterward, his face returning to its usual stern expression, but his eyes carried a subtle acknowledgement, a recognition that Emily had surpassed an expectation that had been unspoken yet universally assumed. "Good work," he said simply, and though the words were brief, they carried immense weight, resonating deep within Emily as affirmation of the effort, skill, and resilience she had cultivated. The rest of the day continued with challenging exercises that required endurance, strategy, and teamwork, but Emily moved through each with a quiet sense of confidence that was impossible to ignore. She noticed the subtle changes in how the other recruits responded to her. There was respect in their eyes, curiosity in their glances, and a sense that her presence had altered the dynamic of the group. She realized that her growth was not just physical, but mental, emotional, and social. She had become someone who inspired, who demonstrated calm strength under pressure, and who could navigate complex challenges with skill and patience. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the field, Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The exercises had been grueling, but they had revealed her true potential, and she understood now that the journey was not about overcoming others, but about rising above her own doubts, fears, and limitations. That evening, back in the barracks, she reflected on the day's events while stretching her tired muscles. She thought about the moment she had freed herself from Sergeant Williams' hold, the look of surprise on his face, and the silence that had followed, a silence that had spoken volumes about her capability, determination, and skill. She realized that her journey was far from over, that there would be more challenges, more surprises, and more opportunities to test herself, but she felt ready. She had learned to trust her instincts, to remain calm under pressure, and to approach every obstacle with strategy, focus, and confidence. Emily thought about the growth she had achieved in just 4 days, the transformation from a girl who had felt small, uncertain, and overlooked to someone who could confront challenges directly, respond with skill, and inspire respect without needing to boast or dominate. She understood that true strength came from persistence, awareness, and the quiet, steady power of self-belief, not from brute force or aggression. As night settled over the camp, she lay on her cot, staring at the ceiling, feeling the soreness in her muscles but also the quiet fire in her spirit. Every moment of struggle, every ounce of effort, every bit of focus she had invested had built something stronger within her, a resilience that would carry her through the days to come, a skill set that could not be taken away, and a confidence that radiated from her quietly but unmistakably. Emily drifted toward sleep with the certainty that the next day would bring new challenges, perhaps even harder than those she had faced, but she welcomed them. She understood now that challenges were not threats, but opportunities to rise, to prove to herself what she could achieve, and to solidify the strength, skill, and determination that she had spent years cultivating without even realizing it. The camp, once intimidating and overwhelming, had become a place of growth, learning, and self-discovery, and Emily knew that she had finally stepped into a new version of herself, capable, resilient, and ready to face whatever came next with courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination, prepared to transform any obstacle into an opportunity and any doubt into proof of her own incredible potential. The 5th day of training began with an energy that felt different from all the previous mornings, as though the camp itself was aware that something significant was about to happen, and Emily felt it too, a quiet anticipation building in her chest as she stood in formation with the other recruits. The air was crisp, the sun still low on the horizon, and the faint hum of distant activity seemed to amplify her focus rather than distract her, giving her a sense of clarity she had never experienced before. Today was the final test of the week, a culmination of every lesson, every challenge, and every ounce of endurance, skill, and mental strength that the recruits had accumulated over the past 4 days. Sergeant Williams addressed the group with his usual stern tone, emphasizing that this exercise would require not just physical ability but sharp thinking, quick adaptation, and the courage to act decisively in moments of uncertainty. Emily felt a flutter of nerves, but it was accompanied by a steady, determined calm, the product of every triumph, every failure, and every small victory she had earned in the days before. The first portion of the test involved a complex obstacle course, longer and more challenging than any before, requiring speed, agility, precision, and endurance. Emily moved through it with deliberate focus, carefully calculating every step, every jump, and every grip, aware that mistakes could cost valuable time and create unnecessary strain. She encountered the mud crawl, the rope climb, and the balance beams with confidence, remembering how she had overcome similar challenges before, and feeling stronger and more capable than she had ever known. As she reached the midpoint, Sergeant Williams introduced the final element of the test, a one-on-one physical and strategic challenge that would test not only strength but skill, reflexes, and mental composure. Emily was paired with a recruit named Mason, known for his speed and agility, and who had intimidated some of the others with his confidence and quick movements. Emily felt a familiar spark of nervousness, but it was quickly replaced by focus, the same quiet determination that had carried her through every obstacle over the past 4 days. The exercise began, and Mason moved with impressive speed, trying to anticipate her movements, but Emily remained calm, her mind clear, her body responding with precision rather than force. Every motion was deliberate, every adjustment calculated, and every small shift of balance executed with careful control. Then Sergeant Williams stepped in, demonstrating a correction technique, applying a firm hold on Emily's arm to guide her through a maneuver. In that instant, the moment she had been preparing for arrived not with anger, not with force, but with clarity and skill. Emily drew in a deep breath, centering herself, and in a swift, deliberate movement, she adjusted her stance, shifted her weight, and released herself from the hold, breaking free in a way that surprised everyone, including Sergeant Williams. The camp went silent for a heartbeat, the recruits frozen in astonishment as Emily stood tall, mud-streaked, sweat-covered, and completely composed, a mixture of exhilaration and calm determination radiating from her. Mason stopped mid-move, staring at her with wide eyes, and even Sergeant Williams' usual stern expression gave way to a moment of recognition, a subtle nod that conveyed both surprise and respect. Emily felt a surge of pride and relief, but more than anything, she felt a quiet affirmation of her own capabilities, a realization that every ounce of effort, every challenge overcome, and every moment of doubt she had faced had led her to this precise point. The remainder of the day was a whirlwind of endurance tests, teamwork challenges, and complex problem-solving exercises, and Emily moved through them with a newfound confidence that was evident to everyone watching. She communicated clearly with her teammates, adjusted her strategy as needed, and completed tasks with precision, her mind sharp and focused even as her body trembled from exhaustion. Recruits who had once whispered doubts now looked at her with admiration, some seeking her advice, some silently noting her resilience, and Emily realized that her journey had not only transformed her but had inspired those around her as well. Each challenge became less about proving herself to others and more about testing her own limits, exploring the boundaries of her endurance, and embracing the quiet strength that had been growing within her since day one. By late afternoon, the final set of exercises required a combination of all the skills Emily had honed: balance, strength, precision, adaptability, and mental focus under pressure. The scenario was unpredictable, requiring improvisation, quick judgment, and composure under scrutiny, and Emily approached it with a sense of calm excitement. She remembered every lesson from the past days, from overcoming fear to mastering precision, from trusting her instincts to adapting to unforeseen challenges, and she applied each one seamlessly. As she completed the last task, the sun was low in the sky, casting golden light across the compound, and Sergeant Williams stepped forward, his eyes studying her with the subtle acknowledgement of someone who had witnessed remarkable growth and achievement. "Well done, Emily," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the field, and though it was brief, it felt monumental to her. Emily's heart swelled not from the words themselves, but from the knowledge that she had proven something essential to herself, that persistence, preparation, focus, and quiet courage could achieve what had once seemed impossible. The other recruits gathered around, offering nods of respect, quiet congratulations, and smiles of admiration, and Emily felt a profound sense of connection, recognizing that her journey had not only shaped her but had also influenced those around her in meaningful ways. Later, back in the barracks, Emily reflected on the week, thinking about the progression from doubt to determination, from exhaustion to resilience, from uncertainty to confidence. She remembered every fall, every struggle, every small victory, and realized that each moment had contributed to her transformation, forging a version of herself stronger, wiser, and more capable than she had ever imagined. She considered the looks of surprise and respect she had seen in Sergeant Williams and the other recruits, and she understood that while recognition from others was meaningful, the true achievement lay in the growth she had cultivated within herself. As night fell, the camp quieted, and Emily lay on her cot, her body aching yet her spirit vibrant and alive. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment that went beyond physical triumph, the knowledge that she had faced fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and had emerged not only intact but strengthened, transformed by her own determination and courage. The challenges she had faced were no longer obstacles, but stepping stones, each one contributing to her understanding of who she was and what she could achieve when she trusted herself fully. Emily drifted to sleep with a profound sense of peace, knowing that the journey was ongoing, that life would continue to present tests and trials, but that she now had the skills, focus, and inner strength to face them all. She had discovered the power of persistence, the importance of trust in her own abilities, and the transformative effect of quiet courage in the face of challenge. The camp, once intimidating and overwhelming, had become a place of discovery, growth, and self-realization, and Emily felt ready for whatever lay ahead. She had risen above every expectation, every doubt, and every challenge, proving not just to the camp or to others, but to herself, that she was capable of extraordinary things. And as the night deepened and the stars twinkled faintly above the quiet camp, Emily slept with the calm certainty of someone who had not only survived but had grown, thrived, and discovered the strength and courage that would guide her through every challenge she would face in the future, ready to continue rising, learning, and shining in ways she had never imagined before.